the biggest entrepreneur platform on the planet. This is Business Rockstars.
This is Business Rockstars. I'm Mark Lack, and joining us is a very special guest. We've got Ram, the co-founder and CEO of BUDDI.AI. Pleasure to have you on the show.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
So do me a favor, catch us up. What does your company actually do at BUDDI.AI?
So BUDDI.AI is a deep learning platform highly curated for improving the healthcare outcomes when we say outcomes both from a revenue cycle standpoint and from a clinical standpoint. So think of it, if you will, as an AI platform for healthcare.
Interesting. Which sounds like the inevitable future of every industry. Which,
exactly.
Well, I know we're going to talk more about that. Real quick, we were talking before the cameras went on. BUDDI.AI, it's actually a play on words. Tell us about that. What does it mean?
So yeah, so it's kind of spelled wrong. Buddy with an I, BUDDI. So buddy, it's more pronounced buddhi in Sanskrit, and buddhi means brain. We are an AI company, and so a play of words, buddy in an English connotation is to assist. And in this case, healthcare, and the same word in Sanskrit means brain, so we're an AI company. So that's the play of words.
I love it. It makes it fun. So tell us about your journey, because AI is something it's definitely taking over, but I know that you weren't always in the AI space. So tell us about your journey and how the heck you got into being in one of the biggest, up-and-coming AI companies growing right now.
So, I've always been a technologist. I came to America 21 years ago, as an immigrant in this country. I have a double master's degree in electrical engineering and information systems. From a very young age, I've been having an entrepreneurial journey. My first company was actually into audio fingerprinting in the media world, dabbling into the entrepreneurial journey. You learn a lot and you fail a lot, and you learn on your failures, and that becomes the stepping stone for the next big thing. I spent 9 years in the media world, then I spent another 5 years in the corporate world, and then I've always been smitten by technology. My first company was also into technology, which is actually listening to audio sound bites. So AI was actually always close to my heart, because anything scalable, anything which is algorithmic, and anything which could actually reduce cost and retain or improve outcomes is kind of the future of any vertical that you can think of. And healthcare is probably the first vertical, if you will, which needs the most, because it's the slowest to adopt technology and change because of the incredible moving parts, inside hospitals and clinics. So yeah, I think AI was definitely something close to my heart. And when I got introduced to some of the problems in healthcare, we quickly realized that on the revenue cycle space of hospitals, of the way the claims get paid by the insurance companies in America, in that entire business model, we quickly realized AI could help automate the entire claims processing and help lower the cost by north of 30% for the hospitals, but improve outcomes and make sure the claims are kosher, if you will, in terms of getting paid by the insurance companies.
Interesting.
So AI is definitely the core to achieve such an outcome.
Are there other examples where artificial intelligence is actually used in the healthcare context or environment?
So,
or is that the key focus that your company does?
So that's a good question. So AI has been utilized by a myriad of companies in healthcare. Now, where it's still a little more primitive, I would say, is because healthcare is such an outcomes-driven entity, right? And the accuracy which you need to derive those outcomes, the bar for AI is very high.
I can imagine.
Yes. So when we're talking about a medical coder, or let's say a medical biller, and then when you actually start throwing all these specialties on the outpatient and inpatient, the complexity of healthcare very quickly becomes extremely high. Now, in comes AI, which actually is trying to learn, what the experts in healthcare are doing, which is the machine learning process, is what we call it, right? The machine learns from the historical data that the hospitals have, which has been worked upon the experts in like emergency or cardiology or radiology. Now the bar is so high, so there's a lot of companies innovating in AI in different realms of healthcare. And where Buddy is actually focusing on today is, and we're really excited about that, is we started the journey with revenue cycle, which is exactly how the hospitals and the clinics get paid by the insurance companies. Reimbursements are key, and AI essentially is focusing here to set a very high bar of 95% plus accuracy. So that's really where
compared to
95% plus accuracy is actually the benchmark what Medicare or CMS, which is the governing body, is requiring. In fact, that's actually the standard. So if I were to be an expert in the revenue cycle space, like a medical coder, I would have to, pick medical codes with a 95% plus accuracy, because Medicare only allows 5% error. So which means the machine has a very high bar, because that particular expert has probably worked in the industry for like 20 years or 30 years. So in comes AI, and it has got to have the exact, proficiency as an expert. And that's where Buddy comes in and starts moving the needle, where we're now delivering the 95% plus accuracy.
Awesome. Which is exciting, because I can only imagine from my limited experience in AI, it learns exponentially faster than a human could. So, even though somebody might have 20 years of experience, the AI should be able to catch up pretty quick, and then almost, my own words, almost be impossible for a human to catch up to at some point. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree with that. To add on to that, what AI does actually something, which as humans as we are, we have our inefficiencies, if you will. AI does consistent job, right? When it sees a data, there's an evidence-based task which has been automated. And as humans, we might get distracted based on what's happening at home or at work.
I get a text message.
Text messages. Yeah. You might be distracted, one Wednesday morning or a Monday morning. And when you have a large work force, right, when you have thousands of workforce in healthcare, you can imagine the kind of actually productivity loss that you might have and the inefficiencies you might have, which might distract their work, which means it might distract the outcome. Well, in comes AI. AI is a machine, right?
No emotions, no stress.
There's no emotions, there's no distractions. The productivity is actually through the roof. In healthcare, you call it the turnaround time, in the sense, if you give a job, to a human or a machine, how fast can you get the work done? Well, there's no comparison, right?
One doesn't sleep.
Well, the machine doesn't sleep, and that's the beauty of it. And then there's a beautiful intersection of AI and cloud today in healthcare, which is making the space even more exciting for hospital executives today, because in comes large cloud companies like Microsoft Azure and Amazon AWS, and this beautiful intersection of cloud, even in a regulated industry like healthcare. You have HIPAA and SOC 2 certified cloud, where you can get all the hospital data sets in the cloud. And then when you have AI can scale in the cloud elastically along with the data sets. And that's really what brings in the efficiencies, because we're not trying to displace, all of the healthcare folks. We're trying to, displace jobs from one to another, because we also hire a lot of healthcare experts to train, to curate AI. So I'm of the great belief that AI doesn't really actually, make people lose their job. It actually displaces them from one skill to another skill.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Political way of wording it.
Well, we call it reskilling.
Correct.
Yes.
We just provide a new opportunity by replacing the other. It's a great way of wording it. Now, I got another question for you. Right now, with the unique times of COVID-19 and the pandemic, can you give any examples of how artificial intelligence is supporting doctors and hospitals?
Sure. Unfortunately, we are in the midst of a pandemic. COVID-19 has disrupted the way hospitals run business, not just hospitals, almost every other business in the world. COVID-19 has been some sort of a boon for AI companies, especially for BUDDI.AI, because what's really happened is there's been a lot of challenges in terms of operations for certain healthcare vendors or certain hospitals. If one of your workers falls sick, there's the inability for you to work together in one room. And when you do fall sick, what happens basically, you get quarantined. And in some cases, actually, we've seen situations which happened to us where one of our vendors came to us and said, Ram, BUDDI.AI is a contingency because we see some of our offshore vendors, unable to actually, get their remote, operations up and running, and they were panicking. And in comes BUDDI, and we started scaling because a machine needs compute and RAM, in the cloud, and that's where the cloud and the AI intersection has been absolutely, I would say, more romantic, if you will, because we see the future of automation, giving a helping hand for the hospitals to reduce the cost. To put some statistics here, the top 100 hospitals have been losing in COVID-19 roughly $1.3 billion a day. Now, to put that in perspective, the hospitals are actually figuring out ways by which actually they can recoup, from this loss. And COVID-19 has spiked ED, which is emergency department. Now, ED is typically a loss maker, a loss leader, if you will, for hospitals, which means the more you have incoming volume in ED, the hospital's really not making money, all right? And hospitals also a business model. They got to make money to be staying afloat, right? So, but at the same time, the elective procedures where they actually truly have good margins has been completely axed because of infections and unable to actually operate them, where all the patients are actually unwilling to come into a hospital for an elective procedure. So all those appointments have been canceled during this last 4, 5, 6 months.
Wow.
So it's kind of a perfect storm for the hospitals. So AI companies like us really are stepping in and helping hospitals to actually automate the revenue cycle portion and help them reduce their cost by, at the minimum 30%. And that actually goes a long ways when you're actually, looking at numbers like, top 100 hospitals combined losing $1.3 billion a day.
That's insane. And that leads me to the question, obviously, with that type of opportunity, you're not the only one capitalizing on this. So could you explain to us in the audience, how is BUDDI.AI actually different from any of the competition who's capitalizing on this same opportunity?
Sure. So to answer the question, I do want to share what we do. What BUDDI.AI really does today, we have an ensemble of products today. Our claim to fame, if you will, is Coding.AI, right? Coding.AI is been a revolution in the revenue cycle space where we came in and we completely automate the entire medical coding. So we read the medical record, the machine applies medical language processing, which the industry calls as NLP. We call it MLP, which is medical language, because we curate the AI for healthcare. And then we also apply a Google-like, a fancy word called knowledge graph. Now, a graph technology, imagine if you will, is basically when you read a medical record and you say, yes, I understood it, right? The word understood is what the technology that we built in the form of a clinical contextual graph. Now, combining these two, the MLP and the graph, we then apply the Medicare, the Medicaid, standard of medical coding in this country, and then we automate medical coding completely, right? Typically, this function is performed by an expert onshore or in-house in a hospital, or it's offshored. We're actually giving the fourth alternative, which never existed, which is autonomous coding in the cloud by the AI. So it's not in-house, it's not onshore, it's not even offshore. In fact, we're more cost-effective than offshore. So we're basically, giving the hospitals absolutely no choice to consider BUDDI.AI as a partner to come and actually help them, scale, but at the same time keep the 95% accuracy and actually reduce, the cost. Now, how do we differ with competition? Well, we differ with competition, in a big way. One, we give contractual guarantees in terms of 70% of the volume of the charts that you process, the patient encounters that you might have, we fully automate it. 70%. Okay. Now, of the 30%, we actually also help them with the AI. with the assisted codes, if you will, so that the humans actually, when they look at those codes, they're actually spending lesser time, which means their productivity is increased. Second, we actually reduce your cost by 30%. So we ask the hospital, Mr. Hospital, what's your spend? No questions asked. We axe your spend by 30% at the minimum, right? So in comes Buddy. We're saying we're going to automate 70% of your volume. We're axing 30% of your current spend, and the third, which
and
is,
you guarantee it.
and we guarantee it in the contract.
Wow.
So competition has a high bar. And we like to set that high bar, and we welcome competition. Healthcare needs competition because, much like the Elon Musk story, where you need more electric car companies to have a market so that you have a broader pie, if you will. The similar way, we need a lot of AI companies to come and actually help hospitals, help clinics, both in the revenue cycle space and the clinical space, so that the pie becomes bigger. The market's more, warmer in terms of adopting such technology, because healthcare is very slow in adopting such technology.
But when they do adopt it at the rate that it sounds like this perfect storm is creating for you guys, do you think that someday, not today, but in the future, physicians will actually be eliminated from technology like this? And should they be scared?
No, absolutely not. I think physicians are the bedrock of American healthcare society. I think physicians actually, they're the heroes of this pandemic. I mean, can you imagine a situation when COVID-19 hit, and if an ED physician refuses to go into an ER room to treat a COVID-19 patient? We can't even fathom that world. There's been heart-rending stories about ED physicians losing their lives, treating COVID-19 patients. And I think AI is definitely not meant to replace physicians at all. The whole idea of AI is to assist physicians, right? Because AI basically understands even the physician might be distracted, right? For example, in BUDDI.AI, we do something called as clinical documentation improvement, CDI.AI. Now, in CDI.AI, what happens basically is, unfortunately, the American business model in healthcare is that when a physician documents, when a patient like you and I, we go to a hospital or a clinic, we get the clinical service, but then the physician has to document the medical record, right? We even get that back, by the way. And I don't know if you've read some of these medical records. So when you read the medical record, unfortunately, these medical records are written for medical coding. This is the little-known fact. Now, the reason why...
So it's not easy for us to interpret.
Well, yeah. Well, the charts are documented in such a way they actually get reimbursed properly. So when a physician documents, sometimes they're distracted, they have multiple patients they have to see. Now, we help the physician to make sure they don't make mistakes in the documentation. So that's a classic example where we're not trying to replace a physician. We're trying to help a physician to, hey, doc, if you're documenting for sepsis, did you document for causative organism, right? If you didn't document that, they get a lower reimbursement. And we don't want the physician to get a lower reimbursement. And that's where AI comes in, steps in, and actually assists the physicians in real time. And physician burnout is a real deal. 42% of all physicians in America have reported actually physician burnout, which
I would
means...
imagine. It seems like one of the hardest jobs ever.
It is.
Especially right now.
Exactly. Well, think of a COVID-19 situation and add it on top of that, right? For those transactions they saw, in an ED room, you won't get paid unless you go document as well. So now think of that, added burden the physician has. The administrative burden the physician has is really where Buddy steps in, where we want to axe the administrative burden. Let me give you a stat here, which actually is going to be staggering. There is a wasteful spend in America in a given year for medical coding and billing on the administrative section of roughly $265 billion. Just fathom the number for a second.
All your stats are in the billions.
It's 18% of the GDP which is spent, and 30% of the 18% spend is actually a wasteful spend, according to the government. These stats are coming from the government, right? And where Buddy really comes in is actually assist physicians, and we really want to help lower the physician burnout in every which way. So I think we love the physicians. They're the bedrock of the healthcare society. We love to partner with them. That's the word.
It almost sounds like they should really actually enjoy this type of technology because it sounds like it's really actually supporting them in the tasks that you said, create burnout and pay and all these other things that you were just referencing. So they're almost, again, probably happy that this technology is coming into the marketplace.
So it is a little frustrating from a physician standpoint because it's kind of a double-edged sword. Physicians don't want to change their behavior, right? And behavioral change is actually one of the hardest things ever, right?
Nobody likes change.
Nobody likes to change. At the same time, physicians do want technology to come and axe their administrative burden. They want both at the same time, right? And how do you kind of actually, hit the compromise, if you will, which is not too much from the behavioral change and actually how AI can actually come and assist. Though that's really where the voice technology like and AI helping seamlessly in the background. That's where there's going to be a huge intersection of voice and AI, where the physicians really don't have to actually type. It's going to be a lot of voice driven, and then you have AI which picks it up and actually does the heavy lifting, if you will, so that. As we see from today, 2020, we envision 5 years from now, that BUDDI.AI, should be a market leader in automation, in helping physicians, knocking out that administrative burden from them.
And that leads me to my next question, which is, with the slow adoption that you were referencing earlier, what do you see as one of the greatest challenges to actually get them to fully utilize this at scale? And how are you guys planning to actually overcome that?
So healthcare is local, healthcare is personal, healthcare is also highly fragmented. It's by far the most fragmented in the country. So in terms of actually a strategy, is we're going with a Swiss Army knife approach. We are actually going in the cloud. We partner with Microsoft. We are an IP co-sell ready partner and a Transact ready partner with Microsoft.
Microsoft, just a little small one.
Yeah. So Microsoft actually is a great believer of Buddy, and we are throwing out AI as an API. Again, a very new thing in healthcare because AI-based SaaS companies are few to little in healthcare, where in comes the data, AI does the magic and actually gets the output, in terms of medical coding or medical billing or MIPS measures or CDI. At the same time, we're partnering with a lot of revenue cycle management companies coast to coast in America, so that they are actually servicing a lot of providers and clinics in different states. We go to them and we partner with those vendors who have existing contracts, so that we help them improve the outcomes. We help the providers indirectly. And then we're also going directly to providers as well. So we're having multiple different angles of helping the healthcare community, either through channel partners, or we're actually going directly to the providers as well, so that we work directly with them. Now, it is slow, and the reason being is because change is not something which comes about overnight.
And especially not in that industry.
Very true. And also healthcare being a 24/7 industry, they don't want a software to break down during the switch, during the the cutover, if you will, from one software to another. So typically, some of these changes, even when we're talking about a new vendor coming in and actually installing AI, takes anywhere between 8 to 14 months. Depending on the size of the organization. In some cases, it might take 18 to 36 months.
Which is what I would expect, Even 18 months seems actually pretty fast.
Very true. Depending on the size of the organization. Large 500-bed plus hospitals has more moving parts, and it will be a phased approach in terms of actually how the rollout really happens. But taking a step back, we're really proud of what we've achieved in the last 8 years because the industry is crying out loud for AI-based technologies to come and streamline the revenue cycle with $265 billion wasteful spend. That's just the wasteful spend we're talking about, right? So what BUDDI.AI really has is a holistic automation technology which takes the entire revenue cycle in context and automates all the way from CDI, medical coding, medical billing. It automates the MIPS measures, which is the value-based care with the Affordable Care law, which is actually passed by Obama. And we're talking about a complete automation solution with an AI, which is underneath, powering which delivers the 30% plus cost savings.
Well, as we come to a wrap in just a minute, it's undeniable that you're passionate about this, that you're an expert about this. And so I want to know, in just a few sentences, what excites you the most about AI, just in general, regardless of the healthcare space?
I think what excites about AI, so I can give a couple areas, right? Healthcare is fighting, let's take this pandemic. Right, everybody knows COVID-19. Imagine the amount of quantum of brain power which is being put in right now to come up with a vaccine. AI is a classic tool that we should all use for drug discovery. Right, drug discovery is a potential very exciting space where we should all be excited about AI, because if you have hundreds of thousands of molecules, to actually go, search from, how do you know the 10 or 12 molecules which could actually get us the drug which is going to cure the cancer, or which is going to cure the type 2 diabetes, or which is going to cure, bring up a vaccine, let's say, for COVID-19. So drug discovery is definitely something I'm super excited about. I'm also excited about, in the whole realm of actually the whole administrative burden of physicians, because it is an ongoing stress the physicians go through. The untold story about physicians in America, the suicide rate of physicians in America. So these are all real stories, and the more AI can step in and actually can knock that off, I think that's a space that we're super excited. The other realm we're very excited about is radiology and ophthalmology diagnostic imaging analysis. Imagine, if you will, that you and I get an X-ray or a CT scan, God forbid not, but if you do, AI can actually interpret images and predict, right, whether there is a precursor, a stage 1 cancer. So AI does a lot of prediction, and the more data sets that we collect, that's why some of the initiatives that actually, Elon Musk and actually some of these other entrepreneurs in the country have been actually, talking about is we need to open up more data sets in healthcare. The more the data that you open up from all the hospitals, all the labs, it really helps us do better machine learning and better AI prediction to help actually, predict, a disease, progress much earlier. And with drug discoveries getting better and better with the AI-powered, engines, the prospects of future is actually very rosy.
I love this. An eye-opening interview, to say the least. An exciting future ahead, being disrupted by companies like yours. I appreciate you for coming on the show. Real quick, is there a website or LinkedIn profile that you'd like to send anybody listening to learn more?
Definitely a LinkedIn profile. We could be found at BUDDI.AI, which is BUDDI.AI.
Fantastic. Go check it out, guys. And Ram, I appreciate you for coming on the show. I'm Mark Lack. This is Business Rockstars. For more interviews like this one, head over to businessrockstars.com.